Welcome, everyone. Sorry, I had a problem starting up, so hope you didn't log on and see that there was no one there. If you did, thank you for trying again and coming back on. Okay, let's start. Let's start with this week's parsha, the Shiur on this week's parsha. So, as you all know, this week's parsha is Teitzei, and it actually covers so much. So many mitzvot are mentioned in this week's parsha, 74 in total, and that's more than any other single parsha in the Torah. So laws that cover from war to the home, agriculture, business ethics, from marriage to divorce, from compassion to animals to remembering what Amalek did to the nation. But fairly early on, in fact, one of the first things mitzvah we read about is, and I'll read it to you in English. It says that when you go out to war against your enemies, and Hashem your God delivers them into your hands, and you take captives, and you see among the captives a woman of beautiful form, and you desire her, and you take her for yourself as a wife. Right? So, listening to that first time or reading that at first glance, it's quite shocking because it would seem that Torah is permitting a soldier in the heat of battle to take a non-Jewish captive and take her as his wife. So, what's really happening here? Is it a concession to lust, to the chaos of war? Um, Interesting enough, the Gemara on this, our rabbis teach us that this particular mitzvah and the fact that one can take a non-Jewish captive from war and marry her, says the Gemara that the Torah speaks here only against the Yetzer Hara. The Torah speaks against the evil inclination. Now, it's interesting. What does it mean? Is that Torah actually recognizes the reality of human weakness. So we know that war is an environment where, unfortunately, morality breaks down. And soldiers are often consumed by passions, by very brutal, by very basic instincts. And we find over here that the Torah therefore channels this dangerous impulse into let's call it a working framework, one that slows the process, one that actually creates obstacles, and ultimately forces the soldier to confront the reality of his choice. And I'll go into that, what the law entails and the process that is involved in making this captive woman who is non-Jewish into the soldier's wife. So again, I want to try unpack it. I want to try explain it and try hopefully find application to our times today. None of us, thank God, are soldiers going to war. So what is the practical application of this mitzvah to us in our times, in our lives? So let's first go through the actual structure of the law. So again, it says that you bring this woman, this captive, she'll bring it into your house. What then happens is you have to shave her head and let her nails grow. In fact, just on that, the commentaries actually differ. Is it letting her nails grow, or is it in fact removing her nails? Now let's just stick with the opinion that it means letting her nails grow. Just you also take off her clothing of war. Now, again, just to give you a little insight into that, the nations of the world, when they went to war, the woman dressed very glamorously, very, if I say, inappropriately, very enticingly, in order to entice the soldiers and to get their minds distracted from war. So they would actually be dressed in nice, smart clothing, and therefore the soldier would have to remove those clothes, that's whatever she was wearing, and put her into very, very basic clothing. And she would have to actually go into mourning. She'd have to, as the verse says, weep for her father and mother for a full month. And after that period, if you still then desire her, then Torah permits that you can marry her, that she should become your wife. What we actually see here, and it's quite fascinating, excuse me, is that Torah makes the soldier pause. He can't act immediately. He can't act in a moment of passion. Instead, what happens? He takes her home. He strips her of all the glamour of war. He allows her a full month of mourning. And the commentaries actually explain, Rashi explains, that the Torah forces the soldier to wait to actually see her in a state of grief and dishevelment. And you can imagine what she looks like with her head shaved and weeping all the time, so that his passion, his lust will subside. Ramban Nachmanides interestingly says that the mitzvah is not an ideal at all. Okay, in other words, ideally we don't want the soldier marrying this non-Jewish captive, but he admits, Ramban, that it's actually a concession. It's a concession. The Torah's true preference is that the soldier actually overcome his desire entirely. And that's what I was alluding to before, that we allow the soldier to do it in a way that's now going to become permitted. And I'll speak about that a little more shortly. Sefer HaChinuch says something very similar. He says the purpose of this process is to subdue the Yetzer Hara by making the process unattractive and delayed. This person who looks so glamorous, who you lusted after, now you have to wait a month and just see if you still really want to after the 30-day period. So basically what Torah is doing is slowing down the whole process, taking away the passion, taking away the impulse from the soldier. It's interesting to note that one of the most important lessons from this episode, and by the way, the woman is called the Yefat Toar. That's how it's referred to in Jewish literature, the episode of the Yefat Toar, this beautiful woman. Torah admits that life is not utopian, and Torah is not utopian. In other words, Torah doesn't speak to a utopian society, utopian world. And unlike other world philosophies or philosophies at the time, where human beings were imagined as these perfect creatures, angelic, the Torah is actually quite realistic. It knows that people have desires. It knows that we're all fallible, that we have weaknesses. And rather than pretending that those fallibilities, those weaknesses don't exist, the Torah over here and other examples actually provides, let's call it kosher channels. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that the Torah legislates not only for the saintly individuals, but also, as we see over here, for an ordinary soldier in the heat of passion. And by having this structured process, the Torah actually prevents far greater abuses, far greater sins, because now Torah is actually making a kosher environment, a lawful environment for the soldier to actually eventually marry this woman. But again, through the process, hopefully he's going to become dissuaded and that lust will have dissipated, hopefully disappeared entirely. So what we actually do, and this is part of what Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says as well, is that this concession, what seems to be giving in to man, actually leads to elevation. That once we accept human weakness, then by the Torah giving us law, ritual, process, we're able to actually direct it or redirect it to a much higher place. And again, if we now bring it home and bring it to ourselves and make it more relevant, again, I said, we're not soldiers going out to war. We're not looking to take anyone captive and marry her, but the same principles apply. How many times do we act rashly? Rashly, should I say, sorry. How many times do we act on the heat of the moment, impulsively, from anger, from desire, from jealousy, only to regret it much later? And the Torah's message is pause. Pause. Put a gap between the impulse and the action. And that's why so many mitzvot, and it's not just this one of the captive woman, the Yefat Torah, this beautiful woman, but many of the mitzvot are about creating space. If you think about Shabbat, right? Shabbos is a pause in the week. Kashrut, the laws of kosher, the dietary law, is a pause before eating, right? You're hungry, you're going to eat, but pause. Pause first. Don't just eat out of impulse, eat out of instinct, but make sure what you're eating is correct. Even laws of intimacy between man and woman. Again, the family purity, tarat mishpacha, laws of mikveh, and the waiting, again, is a pause on intimacy. Yes, you've got desires. Yes, you've got wants. Fine. Pause. Let's do this in a permissible, in a kosher way. So it certainly speaks to our time as well. Um, Interesting enough, shortly thereafter, the Torah mentions that if it shall be, and this is still referring to this captive woman that you've taken, who was originally very, very attractive person, that if you no longer desire her, then what does the Torah say? You shall let her go to wherever she wants to go. Furthermore, you shouldn't sell her. Okay? Don't make profit out of this and don't treat her as a slave. Why? Because it says tachat asher inita, because you have humbled her. Okay, she's already gone through this process. You've already degraded her, belittled her. Now you've decided you're no longer attracted to her, you don't want to marry her. Let her go. Let her go free. Don't sell her. Don't treat her like a slave. And even if the marriage ends, so you did marry her, now it ends, she has to be treated with dignity. So she's not property, she's not a slave. And again, if we think about this in the times when Torah was given and the society, as in the civilizations of the ancient world at the time, this is really revolutionary. So if you think about what the other cultures would have done, conquered women who were taken from war, from a city that was conquered, were certainly put into slavery. They became slaves. They were certainly abused. Whereas over here, the Torah very clearly affirms her humanity, her dignity, her right to freedom, and the soldier is not allowed to discard her like an object if things shouldn't work out, if he no longer desires her. Just on this point, Ramban Nachmanides says that this is the part of Torah's gradual mission of civilizing. So what it does, even in times of war, right? In times of brutality, in times of the reality of war, even in those times, there has to be civility, there has to be compassion, there has to be dignity, there has to be restraint. You can't just say it's war, and because of war, morality, ethics, all laws are thrown out the window. Absolutely not. Um, Again, just to reaffirm that the Torah actually dissuades us. The first prize of the Torah is not that a soldier should take a non-Jewish woman from war who he falls in lust with, because you can't even say in love with. That's certainly discouraged. And in fact, the Gemara says, the Talmud says that if you read the paragraphs that come after the paragraph or the episode dealing with the Yafat Toar, this attractive woman that's captive, I just want to put on mute. I think a couple of people were not on mute and it was just causing a little bit of disturbance. So, okay, that's perfect. We find that paragraphs after this episode of the Yafat Toar, we read of a situation where Kitiena leishtei nashim, a situation where a man will have two wives. Remember, it was only fairly recent where the issue of marrying more than one woman was outlawed. Torah law at the time allowed polygamy. But what would happen is that kiele ish, and it goes on to say that you have two wives. Just forgive me, my dog is making I don't know what is absolutely screaming. Give me one sec. Now we do this at home. All these. I'm sorry about that. So the paragraph speaks about if you should have two women, but it doesn't end there, two wives. It says, and one of them would be the beloved one, and one is actually the snu'ah. It's a terrible word. It says they're actually hated. One wife is more favored than the other. And it goes on to say that kiel ish bein sorero mareh, and if you actually have a rebellious son, and the Chazal, our rabbis in the Gemara, actually connect them because it says that if the soldier is going to take this Yifat Toar, this attractive woman, it'll likely end up that she's going to be the hated wife, and that's going to ultimately lead to the rebellious son. In other words, if you give into your lust, um, the consequences thereafter are going to be very, very dire. And that's why the rabbis of the Gemara explain the juxtaposition between this episode of the Yafat Toar, and where it speaks about a man marrying two women, one which he loves and one which he despises. And the following episode, if a person has a rebellious son, it's all linked to the fact that the person gave into his lust and married this person. Um, if so, again, just before I go into the other topic that hopefully we've got time to discuss, if we just think of the Yafat Toar in our lives for practical situations, there's probably each of us has our own particular Yafat Toar, something that's attractive to us, but we know is bad for us. It's forbidden, it's destructive. Could be chasing of money, it could be chasing of honor, it could be unhealthy relationships, it could be addictions. What does the Torah firstly tell us to do is to acknowledge it, don't deny it. But what we need to do is that the Torah gives us guidelines, is create systems, put processes in place that's going to slow down the process and allow you to reflect. And again, we really see the power of waiting. Um, Let passion cool. I've said so many times, you're angry with someone, and now on impulse, you're going to send a WhatsApp or an email, or maybe you're there right in front of the person and you're going to let rip. You're going to absolutely lay into this person. What Torah is saying is don't be like that soldier is going to act on impulse. Wait. In the case of the Torah, it was a month, a whole month the soldier has to wait. Here we're not saying in our own lives it needs to be a month. We're speaking about a mere few seconds, right? Don't act on pure impulse. Don't get angry straight away. You'll live to regret it. That moment of sending that WhatsApp, sending that email, or reacting angrily to someone else, it can take 1 or 2 minutes, but it may be that you're going to regret that moment for the rest of your life. And again, obviously, the other important lesson to take out of this episode is compassion for the vulnerable. And again, so many other times in Torah we've taught this, that we need to remember the stranger, the orphan, the widow, the convert. Again, people who are more vulnerable in society, we need to be able to treat in a better way. Here, even though you've taken her captive and you've made her do all these things for a month, waiting to see if you're still going to like her, love her, marry her. If things don't work out, let her go free. Don't sell her. Don't enslave her. Have the humanity. Let her have her dignity. So there we see as well quite clearly the issue of compassion for those in a more vulnerable position there than we are. Just some stories that come to mind. Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, who, as many of you would know, it was the head of the Musar movement. Musar is all about character refinement, about trying to really be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and trying to rid ourselves of all the negative characteristics, character traits. So the story is told of Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, who was once humiliated or deeply insulted by a person in public. And his students waited for him to see how he's going to respond. And he didn't respond at the time. The next day, he greeted the man warmly, and the students asked, how could you? This person insulted you yesterday in front of everyone. He publicly humiliated. And Rabbi Yisrael Salanta apparently replied, yesterday, my anger was burning. If I had rebuked him then, it would have been my Yetzer Hara speaking. So I waited today. I waited for a time. It doesn't have to be 12 hours, 24 hours. It can be a few moments. But now let my true person, the true person that I am, let me give weight to my Yetzer Tov, my good inclination, rather than my bad inclination. And that's the concept of, in contracts, law of contracts today, they speak about a cooling off period, right? So let us always think about a cooling off period in all aspects of life, especially those heated moments, those heated exchanges. Just take a few seconds. If you still need to react angrily, okay, that's fine. But at least you've given time to pause, to reflect, and to really work out how you're going to respond. and not let your heart take over, but make sure your mind is leading. And in Torah terms, the Yetzer Tov is leading and not being led by the Yetzer Hara. Again, if you even think about just the Holocaust stories that we've all read, um, if you think about hungry Jews, right? Starving Jews, yet, so the impulse would be, I've got a piece of bread, a stale piece of bread, I'm going to eat it, right? That's impulse, that's desire. We can even say it's not even impulse anymore. At that stage, it was just to survive. And you wouldn't have begrudged that person in the concentration camp eating that bread. But so many times we find, or you read stories of that inmate breaking the bread, sharing the bread. Crazy. But again, that's a moment of pausing and reflecting and showing that we're above animals. Animals work on instinct. Animals live on impulse. And that's the level of the Yetzer Hara, linking into our base desires, our base impulses. A Yetzer Torah is about who we are, who our neshama is, who we are as people, and rising above those very, very basic instincts. I want to just go into something else um, until the time ends. We also find in this week's parasha a very fascinating mitzvah called Shiluach Haken. And what this is that if you should chance upon a bird's nest, interesting enough, it says, should you chance upon. I've read stories of people actually trying to find a bird's nest to actually perform this mitzvah, but it's quite clear that if you should chance upon, so it's not something you have to chase after to perform this mitzvah. So anyway, it says, if you should chance upon a bird's nest in the tree, on the ground, with young and its eggs, the mother is sitting over the young or over the eggs. You need to shoo the mother bird away, chase the mother bird away, and only thereafter can you take the young or take the eggs. How does it end? It actually says so that it may be good for you and you may have a long life. You'll live a long life. Interesting that it gives that reward. Think about it. It's the same reward given to honoring our parents. V'harachta yamim. You're going to get long life for honoring parents. And one seems such a small, trivial mitzvah, which, as I've said, it's only that you chance upon. You may never come into experience this mitzvah or be able to perform this mitzvah, whereas all of us do have parents, and the mitzvah of kivud av va'em is always going to apply to some extent. Yet we see the same reward for both. And perhaps the answer to that is that we should never give weight to one mitzvah over another. Pirkei Avot speaks about it. Gemara speaks about it. We truly don't know the reward for one mitzvah. We've got to value every mitzvah on a par. They're all equal simply because Hashem told us to do it, whether we understand it or not, whether it seems more significant or less significant. We have to do it purely because it's a mitzvah. And that's how we can see that the one seemingly insignificant mitzvah has the same reward as that which is what we'd think, it's one of the 10 commandments. It's surely a bigger one. We have to actually see and unpack this mitzvah and see that what Torah is speaking to over here, on the one hand, it's environmental issues. Again, the commentaries point out it's making sure that the species continue. How can you now eradicate the mother and the children in the same day? It's the same concept of not shechting, not slaughtering an animal and its young on the same day. It's taking into account environmental issues, sustainability issues. And if you think about these concepts, which are really what we'd call modern day concepts, right? Green, going green, environmentally friendly. Torah was speaking about this thousands of years ago. In fact, last week's parasha, we spoke about also the concept of war and don't chop down a fruit tree. A similar concept. And don't waste. Things are there, things are in nature to be able to sustain. So definitely this mitzvah speaks to the concept of sustainability, of being aware of our environment. That yes, we may be the pinnacle of creation. We were created last, so that we should enter a world that's already set up and the table's already laid, the banquet is already set for us. But realizing that with that power, I think this is Spider-Man or Batman has this thing, which power with power, great power comes great responsibility, right? Who said I'd be quoting from the cartoons, from the action heroes? But it's true. We may be the top of the pyramid in terms of creatures in this world, but we have to make sure that we're protecting everything else that's below us. And of course, it speaks to feelings for animals, compassion towards animals. And we see so many other cases in the Torah where Torah is very mindful of not causing distress, not causing cruelty to animals. And Torah is aware that the distress is going to be tremendous if the mother bird is going to see you taking its young and taking the eggs. Again, Torah is mindful that we need to eat. We need to have eggs, we need to have young chicks, whatever the case may be. But do it in a way that's going to be less traumatic for the bird. You chase the bird away. Now you're taking it. Of course, there's going to be some pain for the bird coming back to an empty nest, but it's not going to be the same pain as this helpless bird would feel when you're taking the eggs, taking the young from when it's present. And again, just for how we make it applicable today. By the way, before I say that, the Zohar actually sees in this mitzvah cosmic significance. The Zohar says that when a person sends away the mother bird, it arouses divine mercy. The Zohar says that when the cry of the mother bird ascends to heaven, God, so to speak, remembers his own children in exile. So by arousing mercy for the bird, we arouse mercy for Am Yisrael. Very, very interesting, the Zohar puts it. And again, that could be, according to the Zohar, why this mitzvah carries such great reward. I mentioned the same reward as honoring one's parents, long life, because it's not only ecological or ethical or kind to animals, but mystical. It's something that has vibrations and reverberates in heaven that we're not even aware of. The Arizal, also obviously a famous mystic, even said that Shiluach HaKen can be a tikkun, can be a spiritual repair for certain souls. But he also was quick to say that it shouldn't be something that we chase after. It shouldn't be an exercise, a practice that is exploited. It should just be that if we happen to chance upon, as the verse says, a mother bird sitting over its nest, okay, then we can perform the mitzvah, and we should perform the mitzvah. So again, speaking about the issue of compassion, it's speaking about not causing unnecessary pain to animals, a mitzvah that's called tsar ba'alei chayim, not causing pain to living creatures. It's teaching us that holiness is not only in the shul when we're davening, but holiness is any time where we're around. It's how we treat animals. It's how we show compassion. Again, it's not for there's a perfect good reason why shepherds, right? People who cared for sheep, cared for animals, were chosen as leaders. Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, they were able to show that they cared even for sheep. Says Hashem, you're able to care for sheep? For sure you're going to be able to care for human beings. Of course, what it also shows is that if Hashem has compassion for a bird, or Hashem has compassion for all the other animals that Hashem has compassion for, how much more so would Hashem have compassion, mercy upon us, upon man, created in the image of God? There's a story told of the Baal Shem Tov, who once told his students to learn from a peasant. And this peasant, the story goes, stopped plowing the field because a bird's nest was in the way. And the peasant happened to say that if God gave me power over this field, I must use it with mercy. And the Baal Shem Tov said that this is Shiluach HaKen in spirit. In other words, it's not exactly the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKen, but it's a very similar, having mercy. And realizing that, yes, you're in control, you're dominant, you're the farmer over all this land, but again, you've got to yield that power with responsibility. You're probably also familiar with the name Reb Aryeh Levine. He was known as the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim, the Tzaddik of Jerusalem. And amongst the many kind, compassionate acts that he performed, he was known to pick up stray cats. If anyone's been to Jerusalem, you know there's no shortage of stray cats. So he would pick up these stray cats and he'd feed them. And when he was asked why he did this, he quoted this particular mitzvah. He quoted Shiluach HaKen. He said, if God cares about a bird's pain, how can I ignore a hungry cat? Um, just a take home, and I'll end with this practical applications for today. Again, the mitzvah speaks about if you should chance upon a nest. Again, this talks about just going about your normal life, everyday encounters. Holiness lies in the very small acts, the small moments in life. When we notice a nest, we act with care. Holiness in life is the small gestures, the smile, the kind word, not ignoring the needy. And again, it's training our heart. If we're compassionate for animals, it's building character. Hopefully, we're going to be compassionate, even more compassionate for human beings. Again, it shows respect for creation. As I've said, that we should go and use the world, consume, be consumers, who are more conscious consumers about what we're buying and the impact to the world around us. So that's a very, very important take home as well. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully, you've got a little bit out of the mitzvahs. Again, just to recap of Yifat To'ar, that the woman is taken captive. Yes, you may lust after her. Torah is aware that humans have these failings, but Torah allows it to be done in a kosher, permissible way. There are still restrictions. There has to be a month waiting before you can marry this person. Again, in life, before we act on impulse, take a moment to pause. And often it's those few moments that save us from a lifetime of regret. And again, with Shiluach HaKen, remembering that it's the small things in life that have the biggest consequence. We see something so small and significant having the tremendous reward of long life. Again, we never know what small thing that we chance upon and the good that we do to another, what impact that's going to have on the world, what reward that's going to have for us. Not that we're doing it simply for the reward, but again, that is what we're told is the reward. And again, being conscious of the world around us, being respectful of all the other creatures, having humanity, having kindness for animals, for training our hearts, training and refining our character to be compassionate over all creatures and especially our own fellow human beings. Wish you all a good night. Have a good night. Have a good Shabbos. Please God, see you all. Tzipi, hopefully to even see you in Shul over Shabbos, please God. But wishing everyone a good night. Thank you for joining.